right, Love and Torah, part 42. Love and Torah, part 42. Some of you are thinking, when is this ever going to end? Well, eventually. Okay, so, I know this is 42 parts, but really, is there anything more important for us to figure out than the two great commands? I mean, the other details are details really of the big commands, right? I mean, well, I want to understand the holy days. Well, that's part of loving him and part of loving each other to a certain degree. Well, I need to figure out this and I need to figure out that. It's all about love and Torah. So if you haven't figured this part out, you're not going to figure the other parts out anyway. Or if you do figure them out, it won't make any sense if you don't figure this part out. So you have to get this. That's why we've been taking so long with it. And so we're trying to figure out this. How do we love our neighbor? How do we love each other? Because we're now in the second great command, which is the loving each other part. And we were looking in Romans chapter 12. In Romans chapter 12, we finished off in verse 16. And I just want to recover verse 16 because it leads into the rest here. And it's also going to lead into where we go after this, because we're going to finish Romans 12 here in a second with just a couple of more verses. And so verse 16 says, be of the same mind toward one another. Do not be proud in mind, but go along with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Okay. I think the context we're going to see in this is going to have to do with you thinking you know better. Okay? What I mean by know better, I don't want it to just be limited to, well, you think you know better than me or whoever the person is you're interacting with, but you think you know better than the Creator. You think you know better. And just keep that in the back of your mind or the front of your mind as we go through this, that he's trying to talk about this idea of, first of all, you should be of the same mind. Well, that's still talking about the mind of Yeshua. That's referring back to Philippians 2:5, let this mind be in you and that kind of thing. But then he says, look, do not be proud in mind. So he's saying be of the same mind one towards another. And he's not talking about you and me being of the same mind with me or with you, but we should be of the same mind with him. Do we follow that? It's not you and I have to be of the same mind, but if we're both of his mind, we will be of the same mind. So then he says, do not be proud in mind. So how could you be proud in mind? Well, it's not the arrogance or pride in dealing with each other. It's you thinking you know better than him, because we're comparing those two mindsets. Okay, those are the minds we're comparing, or contrasting here. So he says, do not be proud in mind, but go along with the lowly. In other words, go about this in a lowly state of mind. Don't be in a haughty place, all right? He says, do not be wise in your own estimation. Oh, but I know. Oh, we got a lot of people that we interact with like, oh yeah, but I know. All right, we have to be careful with that. The only one who really knows is him. The rest of us are all seeing through the glass dimly or through the glass darkly, okay? We're seeing just as much as he allows us to see when he sees all. Now, having said all that, listen to what he then goes into, because this is the context. I don't think he's shifting topics here. He says, repay no one evil for evil, respect what is right in the sight of all men. If possible, on your part, be at peace with all men. Listen. So now he's talking about in our interactions, there may be strife. He says, repay no one evil for evil. Okay, so what is our definition of evil generally? The vertical understanding of evil is something that is not being used as he intended it to be used. Something that was being done that he didn't expect, intend it to be done. And so this is something even the world can consider. We call things evil in a worldly sense, things that we as a world decide is not the way things were intended to be done or shouldn't be done, that are wrong to do. Okay, so we call that evil. Unfortunately, we tend to limit the thought to things that are on the extreme end in our perception. Remember, the size of the spectrum is our perception. Yahweh doesn't really give a whole idea of a spectrum. It's good or it's evil. It's either as he intended or not. And he doesn't say necessarily that this is on a different place in the evil scale. The only place he really kind of gets your attention a little stronger is a few times he says something is an abomination. Okay? But generally, that's only a few things. Everything else is all evenly scaled on the evil scale, so to speak. So he says, look, repay no one evil for evil. So what does that say when you use his definitions? Do not do what he didn't intend to others because they did what he didn't intend. Remember, we're talking about letting the same mind be in you. Don't be over, thinking, well, oh, I know, and I'm going to take care of this, and I'm going to get my pound of flesh. He says, do not repay evil with evil, okay? And remember, that's do not do things that's not how he intended it to be done to someone because someone did something to you in a way that wasn't intended. Or they did something and somehow you're aware of it. Because some of you will see somebody do something that looks like they're breaking the Torah, and then you need to jump in there, you feel, and take authority in that situation and do some correction or whatever it is, do some judging, and you then have a meanness, something that doesn't fit into the Ruach, 9 aspects of the Ruach, okay, the fruit of the Ruach from Galatians 5:22 and 23. And so he's telling us here something like I've been telling you for years, and obviously what I'm telling you I'm hoping is coming directly from him, and a lot of times I can show you exactly in the scripture where it does come from him, where I've told you, if something goes on around you or is done in your direction, we say towards you or done to you. I don't like the phrasing of something done to you, because something is done, thrown in your direction doesn't mean it's done to you. It depends on how you receive it. But something is done to you, and you are right and they are wrong. If you respond with evil, you're both wrong now. This is critical, okay? If your response is not love, joy, peace, patience, etc., you're now, remember, there's no scale. Well, they were more evil and you were a little evil. No, there's just evil, okay? This is really critical that you get that, because we as human beings use all kinds of orders of scale. Well, it's just a little thing in your mind. Remember, this is about being right in your own mind. It's just a little thing. It's not a big thing. I only stole a little bit of money. I only cheated a little bit. Fill in whatever it was. And so you're thinking the situation you can in your mind justify or rational lie to yourself about why it's okay that you did it. Because after all, it's not so big a deal. What did I do that was so bad? Was it really so bad? Well, is it evil? If it's evil, it's evil. The whole scale is just called evil. There is no scale. There's like, well, if this is a 10 on the evil scale and this is only a 4. All right? So when you're dealing with people, and this is coming out of the verse that talks about being wise in your own estimation and thinking that you're smarter and more bright than another, and also that you might be jumping into his role. And if you're not really sure if I'm reading that correctly, wait till we get to the next verse. Now, well, we didn't go through 18 yet, but we get to 19. So then he says, look, if possible. Now let's understand that if possible means it's not always going to be possible. If possible means that make every effort, okay, that if there's any possibility of being able to be at peace with men, that you should make an effort to be at peace. Problem is that we don't think that we have to if the other person did something that we feel justifies our lack of peace. And there's no verse that says that. The verse says simply that you should not repay evil for evil, and that you should not be so high-minded that you're so much superior and that you're right and everybody else is wrong, and that you have to be careful and understand that you must make an effort, if possible, to be at peace. Being mean is not going to bring peace. Yelling and screaming is not going to bring peace. Looking down upon and judging is not going to bring peace. Mocking is not going to bring peace. There's so many things that we do. Oh, but if you knew what that other person did, I already told you that doesn't matter. Okay? I'm not saying it doesn't matter, meaning there isn't an issue that needs to be resolved. I mean, it doesn't matter in whether or not you are justified to do something that you think you should do when you really shouldn't. It doesn't matter. Yes, it may matter to your relationship in terms of figuring out how to get some of these things that are not desirable in the relationship to stop happening. But my point is that you need to understand that you in your response can be in the same position as you think the other person is in. Oh, they're wrong. Well, now you're wrong too. No, but I'm right because they caused me to be wrong. That's how dumb you sound, by the way. Me too. I do this all the time too, okay? That's how dumb we sound, because we'll use the other person or the circumstance or the situation to rationalize to ourselves. It's a rational lie. It sounds rational to us, and it's a lie. We're going to rationalize to ourselves that the thing that happened or the other person did or didn't do, whatever it was, justifies my now acting foolishly. My acting in an evil way. All right? And so I understand. I'll give you an example with me. You guys have heard me talk about it. I know I struggle at times with the temper, with my anger. And when I lose my temper, I am always wrong. I'm not always wrong as to the thing that I was upset about. I was wrong in that I let it upset me. I was wrong in that I started yelling about it. So it doesn't mean that everything that happens, I'm just wrong. But if I lose my temper, doesn't matter now, I'm wrong. Doesn't mean the other person isn't still wrong for whatever they did. You don't repay evil for evil. And when you repay evil, it doesn't make the other evil all of a sudden good. Remember that when you're on the other side of it. Okay, because some of you do that too. You did something you shouldn't do. It got a reaction that was also not desirable, and now you think somehow you're right because of their reaction. You can't do that either. Everybody has to own their own stuff. All right? And so be careful that we're not allowing the other person's behavior to affect, listen now, not just how you behave, but how you think about your behavior. Because you may think, there's nothing wrong with what I did. It's perfectly understandable considering what you did. No, it's not. Whatever they did, it's not perfectly understandable. We have a Messiah. You guys remember him? We've heard him, right? We have a Messiah. You know, we have a Messiah who was arrested, beaten, scourged, whipped. We're talking about the kinds of whips that take skin off. Not the kinds of whipping that just makes marks on your body, like with hooks in them, okay, broken glass and that kind of stuff. And he didn't say anything because he wasn't going to repay evil for evil. And so understand that, you know, some of the things you go through in your life, a lot of it's just really bad perspective, because we, I don't know what kind of scale we could put it on, but on like the biggest type of scale possible, are beyond spoiled. I don't care where you live, for the most part, okay? Unless you're living in some of those places where they live in utter nothing. They live in dirt in almost under the sky. Okay, so they have nothing. But most places, indoor plumbing, you don't have to go back too many hundred years where there wasn't any indoor plumbing. Air conditioning. Oh, you guys are all spoiled with air conditioning, okay? I mean, some of you don't know, children, do you know that cars used to have a handle to open a window if you wanted the air? Because that was your air conditioning. You had to turn a handle to open your window, okay? That was called air conditioning, all right? All right? This is, but we're so spoiled, okay? You guys have instant, interaction through your cell phones, through the internet, and all this stuff. We have no idea how spoiled we are. The refrigeration we have, the stoves that we have, the ability to store and to cook and to heat up food and all those kind of things, to prepare stuff. We are beyond spoiled. The transportation availability, and yet we whine and complain as if something is so horrible in our lives. Unbelievable. Because we have become to the point, and this is again, loving each other, right? You can't love each other when you're so screwed up yourself. Did I say that too bluntly? Okay, you really can't love each other when you're as messed up as you are. because you're not capable of it. Look, you don't have the right perspectives and appreciations. You're spoiled. And so when you look at things, you're looking through the wrong lenses. And what happens is we become, now listen, this is the extreme end of this. Extreme meaning not that only a few of you have this problem, but this is what it ultimately looks like. Most of you have this problem. What happens is you get to that place where you have, but you didn't get everything exactly the way you wanted. Even though you got most of it, and you whine and complain and get angry and offended and disappointed and just want to, whatever, kill each other over it or divorce each other or stop talking to each other, whatever it is. Even though you got so much, oh, but that's not what I wanted exactly, and I didn't get enough of it, or I didn't get and that's what happens all over the place. It's a huge problem. We become all or nothing. If I didn't get it all, I didn't get anything. So what are you talking about? I did this and this and this for you. Yeah, but you didn't do this. Yeah, but I did all the other stuff. But all you want to focus on is the piece you didn't get. And that's not going to make for good relationships. That's not how you love one another. Because now you're all bitter and angry because you didn't get something. You know, it comes out of being spoiled. It really is. So what is the problem with being spoiled? What's the issue that underlines spoiled? A lack of appreciation. Okay, you just lose the capacity to actually appreciate what you have or what someone does for you, what they bring to the mix, and what, you know? Okay? We sometimes need those big perspective shifts. Look, I'm not ashamed to say, well, that's much ashamed. I'm not embarrassed to admit the reality that my wife and I fight sometimes. But you know what? There's a lot of times where if we don't talk for a little while or she happens to go away or something for a little while and come back, I realize how much I hated being single and I didn't appreciate that I have a wife. And a great one at that. But I'm just saying, we have our clashes just like anybody does. Remember, I told you, if you're married and you're not having any challenges ever, then you're not really married. Okay? But it's in those moments that I get that perspective shift. I realize, but I wanted a wife. I picked this one, okay? And I'm upset about what? One little thing here. Why am I so upset? Okay? And the answer to the question is, almost always, people get upset for one reason. They get their feelings hurt. Okay? And you know what happens? We probably don't do a really good job, if ever, of communicating that to the other person. We just get angry. What we should say is, you may not realize this, but what you did hurt my feelings. And often, if you would ever do that, the person would be like, I'm sorry, I did not mean to hurt your feelings. Now, they may say, well, that's stupid. Why would your feelings get hurt because of that? Which, by the way, if you do that, is a great way to make them feel better. Works every time. You know, if you ever do that, they'll be like, oh, thank you. I feel much better now. I told you you hurt my feelings, and you told me that I'm stupid. Okay. And then we wonder why we get into such bad fights. But if you could go to the person, see, because it's the way we go to them, like, hey, you hurt my feelings. But if you go to them and you're actually sad and say, you know, you might not know this, but, you know, I was upset because you hurt my feelings. And I know you probably didn't mean to hurt my feelings, but when you do that, whatever that was, it hurt my feelings. And that's something someone could be more empathetic with. Of course, if you come out and smack them with, what's wrong with you? Don't you know you hurt my feelings? Because that's what we're saying without saying those words when we're screaming at each other. Because really, it's those feelings things again, right? And the person hurt your feelings because you didn't feel something. Respected, provided, protected, honored, whatever it is, you didn't feel something. See, but now, that mind that's supposed to be the mind of Yeshua, the one with the love, joy, peace, patience, it requires something that we're terrible at: communication. We're really bad at that. In other words, sharing in an honest way what you're feeling. Feelings are fine. We just don't know how to handle them. They're real. They're there for a reason. You know, when somebody does something that steps on your feelings, and we talk about the feelings bag and all that stuff, but when your feelings get stepped on, that's not necessarily the problem. I don't want you to have no feelings, but find a better way to communicate to the person, because if they love you, wife, husband, children, parents, whatever, brother, sister, brethren, if they love you, they wouldn't want to hurt your feelings or step on them, okay? And by the way, if they step on them on purpose, it's probably because you stepped on theirs at some point and they didn't deal with you properly when that happened. And so they're wanting to push your button to make you feel what they're feeling. I feel horrible, why should you be happy? Wham, and we step right on the feelings. Start looking and following around, waiting for those feelings to leak out, and step right on them. Ha ha, gotcha. Feels good, doesn't it? Ha, now you know what I feel. All right? You're all laughing because you probably did that last week. Okay, so you know. All right? But this doesn't work in a relationship. You got to remember, I love you, and I asked you to marry me. I brought you into this world as children because I wanted children, and I love you. Yeah, children are going to do stuff you don't always love. Spouses are going to do stuff you don't always appreciate, don't always desire. Forget about love, but it's not what you wanted. I don't like the way you treat me. I don't know. Did you ever think about the way you're treating them? That doesn't justify anything. Don't listen to this crookedly and incorrectly. But you may want to ask the question, because this thing that I just described to you does happen. One or the other got their feelings stepped on, and not necessarily with the other person realizing they did it, at least to start the cataclysmic spiraling, okay? The first step might have been totally not on purpose, if you understand what I'm saying. They just didn't mean it to be that way. But then you do on back, and they do on back, and the whole thing turns into nobody remembers even how it started. And then we end up with this terrible, where we forget, wait a minute, but I love you. I wanted to live with you the rest of my life. I wanted to spend time. Or I wanted to be in this congregation learning how to love you, all of you, because we're going to spend forever together. Because look, it's all the same thing as the marriage model. We, this is the point, isn't it, are supposed to be wanting to, looking forward to, and hoping for a time when we all live together forever. And most of us don't even want to invite each other over each other's house. Okay. Oh, but I can't wait to live forever. And we forget that that also means with the rest of us. So you're thinking it's just going to be you maybe. I don't know. But that'd be lonely. All right? But we're all wanting to be in that same forever community, as I call it. All right? He calls it the kingdom. Most of us today can't relate to a kingdom. I like the idea of calling it at least a forever community. It's a bunch of people living together forever. And living in community. We're not just living by ourselves and we happen to be on the same planet forever, okay? But we're not good at communicating, okay? And part of it comes out of this whole idea that we don't have the same mind toward one another, and we're proud in our mind, and we don't understand how to not just only be wise in our own estimation, because to truly be wise, we have to see things the way he does. Remember, wisdom comes from above. We're seeking the wisdom from above. So how does he see us when he looks at us? How does he see things when he looks at what we're going through? And you have to ask the question, wow, if my spouse is so angry, if my child is angry, if my boss, anyone, and somebody's angry and that anger is directed at you, I don't want you to beat yourself up and like somebody may have told you your whole life it's always your fault. No, but ask the question, is it possible that I did something knowingly or unknowingly that could have tripped that little tripwire? Is it possible? And seek that out. That doesn't make the other person justified if they're acting evil as well. It doesn't justify that behavior. Are we clear with that, right? But you should be asking that question because you can maybe diffuse the whole thing by walking over and going, I don't know what I may have done. I certainly didn't mean to do it. And I'm open to hearing about it if you can discuss it calmly. And don't go there ready to defend yourself. See, we have so much pride that any kind of thing that comes to be pointed in your direction that may be a flaw or your fault, defensive mechanisms go turn on overdrive. You know, it's like in the science fiction movie, shields up, battle ready, guns ready to blast, right? Because you're not ready to just hear, listen now, hear their perspective. It doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean it's real. It doesn't mean it's actually what happened. But it's true and real to them. Did you receive that? When you go to somebody and you talk to them and you're hearing the thing that they're you're going to give them that opportunity to vent a little bit and share with you, ask them if they can share it quietly and nicely. You receive. Do not interrupt. Listen to them sharing their real. That's their reality, their perspective. That doesn't mean it's reality. It's their reality. Just like you're living in your reality. Sometimes you both live in the same reality. Not often enough, though. Okay? And some of you are thinking, yeah, we live in the same reality, we're ready to kill each other or get a divorce. Okay, well, that may be. What about living in the same reality that started you off when you wanted to get married together? You know, when we look at our children, we have to always remember, I brought that into the world. That's mine. I'm responsible. Well, guess what? When you get married, you still got the same sort of thing. I brought myself into this. I chose to do this. Some of you struggle with children and you're like, wait a minute. Unless you had the child accidentally, which does happen, you weren't planning it and you weren't doing what you needed to do to prevent it. But most of you have children on purpose. So you made a decision that's, you look at your child, you're so angry and so frustrated. Wait a minute, you wanted this. Well, I didn't want this. You didn't have much control over that. When you bring a human being into it, look, don't you think that the Creator feels the same way? He created all these human beings. Do you think this is what he wanted? The way we behave with everything? Of course he didn't want that. But he knew he was going to get the wide mix of variety of emotionally screwed up people. Okay? And that's okay, because he's going to teach us how to overcome all that, how to grow in that capacity. But if we can't communicate and be of one mind towards another and recognize I'm angry, they're angry, I have a reason, that means they have a reason. My reason's right, wait a minute, to them, their reason's right. If you can't get there, you can't get there, if you understand what I'm saying. Because all you want to think is, they're wrong, I'm right. No, it can't always be right, wrong. Now, you can get to a place where one of you realizes that you were wrong, and you can get there only when you're calm. And then you can get to a place of an apology and restoration and reconciliation, those things that come with forgiveness. But once you're both in that disconnected, angry, bitter place, you're both wrong. This is not how we can love one another. You know the story of the Good Samaritan? What was going on there? People walked by seeing the person that was injured and having their own thoughts about that person who they were. Did they deserve to be helped? Should I just stay away from them? Whatever preconceived stuff that was going on in their heads. Instead of saying, wait a minute, there's a human being who needs help. All right? If I'm screaming, I'm a human being that needs help. If you're crying and screaming, whatever you're doing, I don't know. I don't cry as much as I might lose my temper and yell. But you may be someone who, when you're hurt, you cry, or whatever it is. Well, if I see that, I should know that means you need help. You don't need more pounding. You probably didn't need the pounding in the first place, right? Nobody needs that. But you need help. But all you can think about is, I'm angry because of what you did. Yeah, but I made you cry, and you now need help. And I did that part. But then I'm thinking, yeah, but if you hadn't done to me, then this would never have happened. See, that's how we spin this whole stuff. That way, whoever's doing what they're doing doesn't have to own anything. And we have to own it. Without owning it, you can't get anywhere. You have to own it, all right? So look, go to the next verse. He says, if possible, right, on your part, be at peace with all men. Now, if possible. It's not possible if you're going to be all hurt, get your feelings all hurt, everything. Now listen, he says, beloved, do not revenge yourselves, but give place to wrath, for it has been written, vengeance is mine, I shall repay. See, I told you we're going to get to this next verse. You're usurping his role when you jump out there to try to get your pound of flesh, your justice, your vengeance. Now, bear in mind, we're talking about vengeance here. We're not talking about you and your spouse or you and whoever have a problem and the communication's broken down and you come and get counsel on how to reconcile and fix the problem. It's when you try to go out there and make the other person pay. Oh yeah, I'll show you. Now you're trying to do the vengeance thing, making the other person pay a price. And that's where he says, no, that's not your job. You don't have that job. Now, if the situation is so uncomfortable, so challenging, then you probably need help and counseling. You may even need separation for a period of time, whatever that may be. But vengeance, in other words, let's put this in other English. I was working with my daughter. She's trying to see what it's like to maybe put a teaching together. And one of the things I kept asking her to do is, let's take the verse and put it in other words. In other words, use English to say the same thing, just use different words. What else could you say here? Instead, so he says, beloved, do not get even with the other person. Do not take it upon yourself to lash out at the other person. Do not take it upon yourself, because you're thinking somehow this is how you get balance and justice. That's why revenge or vengeance. Vengeance is, when Yahweh does it, the bringing of justice. It is the reaping of sowing that brings that kind of wrath. But you're not going to be always righteous in the situation. Yahweh always is. And when he brings vengeance, it's righteous vengeance. And the person absolutely brought it upon themselves, or the nation, or whatever it was. But he's saying here, and using the other words, do not take it upon yourself to lash out at, punish, attack the other person, but give place to your wrath. He's saying this is something that's going to come out of your anger. Don't lash out at the other person. Why? Because that's not the way Yahweh works. If Yahweh worked that way, we'd all be lashed out at all the time. Let's praise Yah, he doesn't do that. He says, vengeance is mine, I shall repay. We read in the scriptures where it says, Elohim is not mocked, you will reap what you sow. So everybody has to embrace with full emunah that truth, that reality. You and the other person, right? You need to know that you will reap what you sow, but you also need to embrace that they will reap what they sow. It works for everybody. This is a universal rule. This is not just for some people. Otherwise, Elohim is mocked. People will reap what they sow. Thankfully, not like 5 seconds after it happens. You've got time to adjust to it, fix it, and whatever you need to do. But ultimately, something that doesn't get addressed will get addressed. You will reap what you sow. Okay? Now, you do not want to be in the role then, and I want you to think about that next time. I'm going to try to do that myself. Think of it the next time that you go to lose your temper and whatever it is, hold on, you're usurping his position. Okay? You are usurping his position. He says, vengeance is mine. He said, instead, if your enemy hungers, feed him. If he thirsts, give him drink. For in so doing, you shall heap coals of fire on his head. So he's saying, look, if your enemy hungers, why would he say if your enemy hungers, feed him? Could it be that it's somewhere in that hunger was the problem? It doesn't just say, hey, go do nice things for your enemy. I'm guessing here that it's using some examples that may be part of the problem. In other words, if your enemy has a need, instead of yelling and screaming and fighting about it, how about just helping them have what they need? Help provide what they need. Maybe they need your patience. Maybe they need your understanding. Maybe they need you to be calm. Maybe who knows, whatever it is, figure out what they need. Give them what they need. If your enemy's hungry, feed him. If he thirsts, give him drink. Now, when he talks about the heaps of coals of fire on the head, that's an idiomatic phrase. There's lots of ways that it could be interpreted, so I'm not going to go there now. But just think of it this way. If you do these things, you're then allowing the reaping and sowing to go to the vengeance is mine person. You're staying out of that chair of judgment that you don't belong in. Make sense? Okay? Now, verse 21, he says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Now again, let's use our definitions. Let's rephrase this. He says, do not be overcome. So some of us think about, I was overwhelmed with my anger. I was overwhelmed with my emotions. I was overwhelmed with insecurity. I was overwhelmed with sadness. I was overwhelmed, overcome by. Okay? My anger overcame me, whatever it was. So you were taken over by this. Don't be overcome by evil by doing what he did not design you to do. Do not be overcome by that. He says, rather, overcome what should not be done and was not intended to be done by doing those things that are intended to be done. So, I'm not supposed to be angry. I'm supposed to have patience and peace and love and joy. I'm supposed to be gentle. See, so you overcome the evil with the good. What's the good? Look at the fruit of the Ruach. That's some examples of the good. When things are being done the way Yahweh intended them to be, he calls it good. When they're not, he calls it evil. Simple, okay? As a matter of fact, the teaching that I was kind of working on with my daughter, we put a little temporary title to, which is The Battle Between Good and Evil. Was that what we called it? Yeah, okay. The struggle, okay, the struggle between good and evil. But this is what we're talking about right here in Romans. The struggle between good and evil. But not the way the world normally pictures it. Usually it's good guys and bad guys in the battle over the whatever. No, it's good is doing things or things happening and being as he meant them to be, evil being the opposite. Things being or not being utilized and not functioning the way he designed them to be. When it's not doing it, it's evil. When it is doing it, it's good. Okay? We need to redefine these terms. You know, as a precursor to the little study we were putting together, we looked up from 2013, the teaching I did on well done, good and trustworthy servant. I need to redo that teaching. It was 3 parts. It'll probably be 48 or so the next time. But because just good alone may take us a while. I think Brianna and I only got through Adam and Enoch, Adam, Enoch, and then we got through Noah and Abraham and a little bit with Isaac, and we didn't get very far, okay? Oh, we did Cain and Abel also, all right? And you could see where things were good and where things weren't good and where the evil was and those kind of stuff. And that took us 2 hours last night to just do that much, okay? So that's just going from the beginning of the book. Oh, and Yithro also. We did bring in Yithro talking with Moshe, all right? So, but the point being that if we're going to love one another, first embrace, that is what he intended you to do. So it is good for brothers to dwell together in unity. Okay? It is good. Why? Because that's how he intended us to be. How good and how pleasant, right? Psalm 133:1. How good and how pleasant for brethren to dwell together, right? How is that? Of course, it's good because it's how he intended it to be. Not just, we think how good and well, how enjoyable that is. Well, you know what? When things are doing and functioning and behaving the way he intended, it is enjoyable. Amen. There's no two ways about it, right? It is absolutely a joy when we're in line with him. When we function the way he intends us to function. And when you interact with someone who is functioning that way, it's a joy for you. Problem is, we're all dysfunctional and not functioning the way he intended. We need factory resets. We're very dysfunctional. But this is where we go back to Philippians 2:5, which matches up with here in Romans, this idea of the mind. Which mind? His mind. If we're going to function correctly, we got to stop thinking like ourselves and start thinking more like him. Not like every single thought, etc. So you're still going to have your personality, etc. But that you will see things the way he sees things. Your perspective would be his perspective. And so then your behavior, which comes out of your mind, Remember, we talked about the combination, right? The head, the thoughts that come out from the head, and then the heart is the emotional content, forms a mind, right? Thoughts and emotions forms a mind. And out of the mind comes the action. If the emotions are dominating, you'll get one type of action. If the thoughts are dominating, you get a different type of action, okay? Whether it's coming from your head or coming from your heart. All of a sudden, I'm Catholic again. I don't know what happened, okay? Every time I touch my head or my heart, I feel like it's weird. But understand, this is the challenge. And so to let the mind, it didn't say the thoughts, it said the mind of your Messiah be in you, which is the way he combined his emotions and his thoughts together to produce a perspective and then a behavior pattern. And so he's telling you to be not proud in your own mind. In other words, the pride where you're going to rely on your mind, not his mind. And this is what gets us in trouble. Because the only one that ever existed correctly and lived their life correctly according to manufacturer specs was Yeshua. The rest of us are running off doing things we're not supposed to do, never were designed to do, never were intended to do, and it gets us in all kinds of trouble. And then we wonder why we are not very good at this thing called life. We're just not very good at it, you know? And what did I say one time? What, life's hard and apparently I suck at it? Is that what I used to say? All right? I haven't said that in a while. But that's something we all kind of hopefully get to that conclusion. Now, the good news is that you can get good at it by letting his mind be in you. Then you can get good at this. But you have to let his mind be in you. Then you can actually think correctly and react correctly and perceive things correctly, respond correctly to the stimuli in your life, in your world. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. And this is the challenge. This is hard because he wants us to make sure we understand that all of this comes back to the battle between good and evil. So you must understand there's our life is unique in that we get to choose good or evil. Not choose what is good or evil. That's when we have the prideful mind. In our prideful mind, we get to decide what's good and evil. Good is good no matter what we think it is. Evil is evil whether we think it is or not. These are like facts, okay? These are realities of the universe. Either something is good or not according to him. According to you, you may think something's good or not good, and that's your own opinion. But things either are or not good or are or not evil. And you have a responsibility to try to figure that out. In other words, figure out what he calls good and what he calls evil. And then embrace and seek after and pursue that which is good. And stay away from and to be, disconnect yourself from all things that may be evil. Reject the evil, embrace the good. Otherwise, this is never going to work. And that's really, if you think about it, why we do so poorly as husbands and wives, as parents, as friends, as whatever. We struggle in all of our relationships. I know I keep going back to the husband-wife thing because that seems to be the one that I get to counsel with the most. But just understand that all relationships have the same problem. If you're friends with somebody and they do something that hurts your feelings on whatever level, it disappoints you, whatever it is, your friendship is going to be challenged and maybe end, depending on the ability of the other person to receive that communication from you. Whether or not, some of you won't even share the communication because they should know. Okay, listen to me. I'm going to look everybody in the eye. Okay? The other person doesn't know. Especially if they're male and you're married to them. You have to tell them. Well, I shouldn't have to tell him. You know what? That is the biggest beat. I'm not going to say it. That is the biggest load of, you fill in all blanks you want. You need to just absolutely stop that. I don't know who made that up or when it started, but everybody that's embraced that, it has wrecked your life because you're so stubbornly thinking, I'm going to be mad because they should know better. They don't know. If they knew, they wouldn't do it. So why do you get so upset? Because I shouldn't have to tell him. Well, who told you? Where did that come from? Where is that written? You shouldn't have to do. Okay, during the wedding ceremonies that I do, there is no place where I say, and now that you're married, you shouldn't have her to have to tell you anything. You should know everything she needs. You are now a mind reader. Okay? Look, I hate to tell you this reality, but the other person that you're interacting with isn't paying that good of attention. And that means the person interacting with you, you're not paying good attention either. Okay? They're not paying that level of attention. Well, I've been hinting and this and that. Did you tell him? No. It's your problem then. Why didn't you tell him? Well, I've been hinting. Listen, okay. I don't care if the man is a rocket scientist, if he's a genius, certified, 160 IQ, and if whatever, okay? He can't figure you out. You have to tell him. It's not because he's stupid. You're out there, you're on the phone with your friends. I think my husband's stupid. Why do you think he's stupid? Because he can't, I mean, I've hinted and all this stuff, and he does. And I'm on the other side of the phone if I was and say, no, you're stupid. Because you haven't told him. And now you're all angry because you're stubborn. And by stupid, it's really more like foolish because you think that the result's going to come, especially because you've been married for 37 years, and now you still haven't figured out that he doesn't get it. Why would it take you that long to figure that out? Didn't you figure that out the first month? Yeah, but I kept figuring that he'll get it. No, he's not going to get it. Okay? Not happening. And by the way, and if you think that, guys are so simple too. Compared to you guys, the guys are simple. Now, you may think we're stupid, they're big lugs or whatever, but I mean, we're simple, okay? But you guys have a lot more different wiring, and that's fine, and we love you for that, but you have to communicate so we know. You can't just hint or whatever it is, or, oh, some of you will say, well, I thought I was being good by not showing him all this because I wanted to be good. That's not helping, all right? Because then you explode, and then he doesn't know why. Same thing with some of you guys. You do the same thing the other way around. Just communicate. Don't just sit there thinking, but he should know or she should know. Okay? Yahweh tells us exactly what he wants. Because he wants you to know that he said it. Okay? So you don't have to guess. And then if you're not sure, he puts a structure in place so you can go ask them. So you don't have to guess. But you sit there with your spouse and you're not asking questions. Same thing with your children. Your children do this, that, and the other thing, but you haven't asked them questions to find out why they're acting that way. Why are you acting this way? And of course, they're going to look at you like, I don't know. Well, you got to dig deeper than that. Okay? But you also have to make it safe for them to tell you these things. Same thing with spouses. If your wife doesn't feel safe to talk to you, or if the husband doesn't feel safe, because some of your wives are pretty strong, and your husbands are afraid to talk to you. Because you might snap them their neck or something, whatever. Some of you got sharp tongues, okay? It can go either way. Depends on the personalities of the spouses. But if you're afraid to communicate, you're not going to ever get there. You can't be afraid to communicate. Just like those of you that are afraid to come for help and talk to me. I get that, but I don't get that. Why would you rather struggle than at least take a shot at getting help? Well, because you might tell me I'm wrong. I'm sure that will happen. Because in almost every situation, both people are wrong in some way. So yes, I probably will tell you you're wrong. I'll probably tell the other guy's wrong too, or the woman, whatever. I mean, but are you wanting the truth and somebody else's perspective, or do you just want your emotionally filtered through your own goggles and the other person's emotionally filtered through their emotion goggles, that reality mess? But you have to see, are you willing to do that? And I'm not complaining, because there's a few of you that call me a lot, and that's good. And probably not too many actually call me too much, but you call me a lot, that's fine. But there's a whole lot of you that never call. And I don't know whether to read in that all of you guys just don't have any struggles or that you found a way to handle them yourselves. That'd be great if that's the case. But I'm sure there's some of you that still should be calling that aren't. Some of you don't, but some of you actually have gotten to the point where you figured out how to handle your own stuff, because you should at some point. I'd like to wean some of you off the phone calls so you can start handling your own stuff. But you need help until you can get there, okay? But this is what we're talking about here. All right, let's go to, oh wow, time is flying. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter. You guys all knew that, right? 1 Corinthians, so how can we do a teaching about love and not get to 1 Corinthians 13, right? All right. Verse 1, if I speak with the tongues of men and of messengers, but do not have love, I have become a sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophecy and know all secrets and all knowledge, and if I have all belief, so as to remove mountains, do not have love, I am nothing at all. And if I give out all my possessions to feed the poor, and if I give my body to be burned, but do not have love, I am not profited at all. Okay, so let's take the first 3 verses. I want to make sure we're very clear about something here. Don't get distracted about what he's talking about so that you don't hear what he's talking about. Nothing of this has to do with tongues. Nothing of this has to do with prophecy. Nothing has to do with giving possessions away. He's simply trying to hit every button that these people might be impressed with and say, even if I did these things that would blow your mind, it would be useless if I didn't have love. Okay? So don't get distracted with the items he picked. Okay? And so you end up missing the point. The point is that I can speak every language of men, even the languages of the messengers, of the angels. But if I don't have love, it might as well be noise. That's what he says. Verse 2, he says, if I have prophecy and know all the secrets and all knowledge and everything that I can explain everything to you, all the belief to remove mountains. If I don't have love, then what do I have? I've got nothing. I'm nothing at all. In other words, there's nothing impressive with all these things. In other words, saying, you guys can do some things and you're all impressed with yourselves, but you don't have love, so what's there to be impressed with? What's the big point? He says, oh, I'm such a generous person. I give away all my possessions, even my body to be burned. But if I don't have love, this doesn't profit me. This doesn't benefit me. Because some of you are very generous and have no idea how selfish you are. I know that may sound stupid, but some of the most selfish people I know are the most outwardly generous people. I'm not talking about it being hypocrisy either. In other words, they give of their time, they give to people, they're very generous. But the selfishness has to do with, but everything in the world still has to be the way I think it should be. So it becomes about you. That's the selfish part. That selfless thing that you're supposed to be striving towards is missing. And so that's why you're so easily hurt your feelings and offended. Remember I said in the teaching on developing the character of Yeshua and other teachings, a selfless person, if you are truly there, cannot be offended. Because it's only you that can get offended. The self gets offended. The more self, the more easy you are to offend. The less self, the less there is to offend. And so, here he's saying, look, I could do all these things and you would be so impressed and say, wow, if I could just be like him. He said, but if I don't have love, then it was of no point. It didn't benefit me and it didn't benefit anybody else in reality. Because you might be thinking, wow, if he had all prophecy and knowledge and secrets and everything and all that belief to move mountains, because that's not the point. What's the point? Well, 42 parts, love and Torah. The point is that it's all about learning to love him and love each other. So if you have all of these gifts and talents and didn't actually receive the point of the whole thing, then it was of no point. It was of no use. Because some of you will strive to study and to learn, and I got to know, and you get all focused on whatever it is you're focused on, and your relationships are all in the toilet. Because you've put all your eggs in the wrong basket. Because the goal was love. Isn't that true? Elohim is Love. And we're trying to understand what that looks like. And so Paul's starting off, before he tells you what it looks like, he's going to tell you in verse 4 what it looks like. But he wants to say, before I even get there, you need to know that there's no excuse. Oh, but I'm speaking languages, and I'm doing all these wonderful things, or I'm giving away everything, and look at all the sacrifice that I do, or I have all this knowledge, and I understand everything, and all this belief to move. No. That's not an excuse not to have love. That's what he wants to start off with. Before he tells you what love looks like, he wants to say, just be careful. Nothing, even at this extreme, justifies saying, I have this, so I don't need to have that. That's basically what he's saying, isn't it? If I've got this, I don't need to have that. And he's saying, no. And he could have gone on with other things. If I had all the money in the world, if I had all the, whatever it is that you think might be an excuse, he said, it's of no value, ultimately, if I don't have love. All right? So now what does he say love is? He says, love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast, is not puffed up. So let's take that verse for a second. Okay, so love is patient. All right, we all failed. There's not a patient one in this room. Me among them, okay? We really struggle with patience. And I'm not talking about patience just like when you're waiting for something. Patience while somebody is still struggling to become Yeshua-like. Patience, while things have not improved yet, even though the person said, I'm trying. We have a real problem with patience. Patience is simply waiting with the right attitude, okay? Waiting with the right attitude while something has not yet happened. Can we agree? Is that about a good definition? So it's waiting with the right attitude pending the thing you're waiting for happening, okay? And so this is a real problem. It says love is patient. It's kind. Some of you are very frustrated and hurt because your spouse, it could be either one, there are mean women and mean men, it doesn't mean that it's only one-sided, who are not kind. And you might not understand that some of the things you do are not kind, I mean, if I call you names, that's not kind. If I yell at you, that's not kind. If you're constantly telling me I'm a loser, I'm useless, I'm this or I'm that, that's not kind. I mean, there's all kinds of ways not to be kind. He says, love does not envy. All right, so I think the obvious things I won't have to mention, being jealous or desiring something somebody else has. Let me tell you how love in a relationship, envy in a relationship can really mess you up. If you, either internally or out loud, okay, you may say it. If you are comparing the person that you love, it could be your child, your husband, your wife, whatever it is, right? If you're comparing them to others, you're in a sense envying, why is mine not like theirs? You're envying theirs, their child, their spouse, their whatever, right? Don't ever do that. Don't compare yours to anybody's. Because first of all, you have no idea what the other person's really dealing with. You get to see that tiny little piece that's in public and have no idea. And the person that you're friends with, who may be the spouse, isn't going to tell you. Because they may be the type that is not going to embarrass and share that laundry out in public, and good for them if they're that person. Well, some of you, we've gotten to be a public laundry world with this whole Facebook and Twitter and everything. Everything, all of our dirty laundry is just out in public. There's no privacy anymore. I forget about privacy like Big Brother and technology watching you. You just throw it out there without anybody asking. Everybody wants to share everything out in public. So there's no privacy. Nobody needs to spy on you. You tell everybody everything anyway. What's there to spy on? Okay? It's just incredible. And so this whole idea of not envying. So you're thinking, why can't mine be more like theirs? Why can't I have one like she has or he has? It could be about your children. How come you watch someone else's children? Oh, they're so well behaved, and mine are like tearing up the place. Well, but yours are yours. And you don't know what else the other issues those other ones have. You don't know. Maybe nothing, maybe something. It's not the point. The point is, why do you focus on that jealous envy that evil eye, so to speak, the desiring something that you shouldn't desire that's not yours. The problem is you're not appreciating yours. You're disappointed. These are all those negative emotions that are being ruled. Love, okay, pushes out all that stuff. Love does not envy. So let's add more into that. So love is satisfied. Love appreciates. Love embraces that mine is mine. It may not look like somebody else's, may not act like somebody else's, may not whatever, but it's mine. And the one that's yours should feel that from you. Should feel, you're mine, and I love you, and I appreciate you. I don't want any other one. I'm not comparing you to any other one. I'm glad that I have you. Now, you're not perfect, and I'm not perfect, and that's okay. But, some of you think, oh, well, if I found somebody else. That's why the people get divorced 3 and 4 times. Because after the first one, they go and get the second one, thinking the second one, because they're not working on themselves. They're just thinking the other person's always the problem. And that's why the likelihood of a divorce, while it might be pretty high in first marriage, is even higher in second marriages. Could you imagine? You would think that it would be the other way around, because after all, you would learn some lessons from the first one and then you do the second one better. It doesn't work that way. There's actually a higher rate of divorce in second marriages than first marriages. And the first one's already up to like 50%. And why is it 50%? That seems like a ridiculous number. Because we don't communicate well and don't appreciate what we have and treat each other like garbage. In ways that we're not loving. Okay? We're not treating each other in loving ways. Is not puffed up. We're not going to get very far, obviously, in this chapter. Okay? Does not boast and is not puffed up. Okay, so that does not boast and is not puffed up. So you don't, in your relationships, push yourself and elevate yourself and put the other person down like, well, I'm doing all this and I'm doing that and you're doing that. And so you're always lifting you up and puffing you up and boasting about you and then saying the other person is garbage. I do all the work and I do all this and I whatever, okay? Not puffed up. Puffed up means full of yourself. Okay? Remember, you're supposed to be outwardly focused, not inwardly focused. So it's not boasting, it's not puffed up. I think we'll stop there because there's a whole lot more we can go into in the other verses there. But hopefully we're starting to get this whole thing. If we're going to love each other, and now we're getting more into that deep, internal struggle, it's got to be a focus on the other person and on the focus on yourself in the right way. The focus on you is becoming Yeshua-like. The focus on them is appreciating them in patience and the fruit of the Spirit. But they treat me this way. Then leave. If you're going to stay, though, you got to do it with the fruit of the Spirit, and you have to have that hope and that optimism, etc. You have to have it that way. All right? I said to the graduating class yesterday, we'll wrap it up with this thing. I said to the graduating class yesterday that you guys need to understand that there's 3 time frames. There's the past, there's the present, and there's the future. Okay? And you need to learn from your past. Okay? Learn from the past, but don't have the past leak its way into your present. All right? The past does not... This is what Tony Robbins always says. He says the past doesn't equal the future. That's not true. It can. What he should be saying is the past doesn't have to equal the future. Okay? Because if you keep doing things in a certain way, the past will become your future and your present. So you must release the past, but learn from it. And do not be living in the past. Oh, but I was told I'm no good and I'm always no good, everything's no good, whatever it is. Can't just keep... Whatever the past was is irrelevant. You can always start at any moment and create a whole different life for yourself if you want to. Now, it's not going to be easy, because creating a life is not easy. Now, you already lived a whole life up to this point, and it wasn't easy. Well, you can change that whole thing to anything you want it to be starting right now. The present. You need to be in that present moment knowing that this is the only time that really exists. And so everything has to be focus, consistency, discipline, effort in your present. Starts off with that hyper-awareness of what's happening right here, right now. Problem is, you're only half here now, because maybe even less, because you're thinking about the past a whole bunch while you're trying to be now, and you're all worried about what's coming later, so you're not really here now. So maybe you have half and 25-25 on the other two. Maybe. You need to be here and now and present and focused. And then your future, you have to have hope. I mean, we talked about being a people who are known for the people who have a hope in Messiah, a hope of a future, a hope in what Yahweh's doing. And so you have to have that optimism, you know? I'm like trying to just do all this stuff from my memory, and I've got the notes right here. Okay, so with your, I want you to be hopeful. This is the same thing I said to the graduates for you as we go forward with this love and Torah thing. I want you to be hopeful. I want you to be optimistic. I want you to be enthusiastic. Okay, so it's one thing to be optimistic and have like a lot of, I'm a little optimistic. No, I want you to be enthusiastic. All right? Passionate. Really be, having that passion about life and about doing things, about becoming Yeshua-like, about doing whatever it is you need to do. Be bold. I said be patient, so it was even the same thing we had here today. And be strong and of good courage, and never give up and never quit. Okay? If you're doing this love thing, you can't give up, you can't quit. I'm not just talking about life in general. Relationships is what I'm talking about. All these things are about relationships that I said, about being passionate and being enthusiastic, being optimistic, about your relationships. Patient in your relationships. Strong and of good courage. It takes courage to do a relationship because the relationship could cause you pain. So it takes a lot of courage to be in a relationship. Never give up, never quit. Okay, the world is getting more and more filled with quit. I mean, I see it everywhere. We're becoming more and more a world of people just so ready to quit, if they haven't already quit. And you've got to keep going with boldness and with confidence and with optimism. Okay? Now, what are we being bold and optimistic about? That what he's trying to do through you will work. Okay? Not just boldly just running forward, still being you. You got to be you becoming him. All right? And have confidence that that will work. Amen? Amen. Let's pray. Father, we come before you, and Father, we really desire to have these two types of relationships and to be successful, actually to be called good in them, so that we're doing them in the way you intended and desired. Father, we want to come to you and ask for your patience and compassion and mercy with us as we struggle in our relationships with you and our relationships with each other. We thank you for your instruction in your word, what we read today in Romans and in 1 Corinthians, and the guidance that can give us, the insight to know what it can look like and the things to do, how to behave and how to relate in our struggles with other people and with you. Father, help us to be loving, to receive love from you and to give love to you and to others in the way you designed it to be, in a way that is good and not evil. So, Father, we want to come to you now very humbly, recognizing how bad we are at this, but that we are committed to consistently put forth the effort and never quit in moving forward in developing the relationships that you desire, so that we can fulfill the commission of the two great commands, to love you and to love each other. So, Father, we come to you now, asking all these things and submitting ourselves to you in the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. Amen. Amen.